in places like Gambia, in Zimbabwe, we have judges from Tanzania and other places. In Namibia right now, there's more than 3 Zimbabwean judges. One of the firms in Malawi was owned by a Zimbabwean lawyer, for example. So there is already pressure from multi-jurisdictional practices. Business itself is continuously being done on a multi-jurisdictional basis. With the improvement of communication and transportation, there can be no doubt that business now is being done across the borders.
Very much for those very interesting contribution and examples. I'm sorry to be chasing people along, but I think it's important that everybody has a chance to put their perspective into this debate. We'll next welcome Philip Jeyaretnam, who's a senior counsel in Singapore. He's a partner in Rowe Dyke & Davidson. He's the president of the Law Society in Singapore.
Well, I don't wear the mantle of moral relativist, but it is a universal value for all lawyers to disagree and to argue. So I'm going to disagree with the chair and the 2 previous speakers and try to bring the debate back to the issue of professional ethics, rather than perhaps more general questions of right and wrong. And I think that disagreements between countries about professional ethics applying or applicable to lawyers really arise quite often in practice, and they arise really from differing conceptions of the roles that lawyers play. And when there are these arguments, neither may actually be wrong in any absolute sense. And I'm going to look particularly at the field of international arbitration as an arena where you see different expectations of lawyers from different systems bumping up against each other and coming into conflict, and lawyers getting very worked up about the conduct of the other lawyer because they assume that the professional ethics applicable in their country must apply worldwide, and therefore the lawyer who disagrees with them about the extent of discovery or about the extent to which you can communicate with a witness before a trial is not merely subject to a different set of ethics, but is actually somehow dishonest or wrong. And I think we need to get away from that. And once we bring in a context, particularly of the civil law and other systems of law, we see that actually differences between lawyers is something which we need to bridge through discussion and debate, and there's a lot of work to be done before we can say that there is a single set of ethics governing lawyers across the world. Like most people here, I trained in the common law, of course, and although it was always my intention to go back home to Singapore and practice there, I did study law initially in England, attended the vocational bar course, read in barristers' chambers. And at that time, I recall the teaching of ethics seemed a very, very new thing. And really the idea seemed to be that we should absorb it from following our seniors around and then applying the instincts of a gentleman to any question that came up. And advocacy was taught in very much the same way. In the words of John Mortimer, all you really needed was common sense and relatively clean fingernails. I went back to Singapore, which is a member of the Commonwealth. At that time, it still retained appeals to the Privy Council. It continued at that time to receive the common law as it developed in the courts of England. But it had a fused profession, and so now I had to study ethics that governed solicitors and not just barristers. And I recall at that time, it was still an open issue whether advocates and solicitors in Singapore should be bound by the cab rank rule. And eventually it was decided that we would not be. But generally, notwithstanding the big difference between a fused bar and a split bar, practice as an advocate in Singapore really seemed very little different from practice in England.
The other views, not quite that we all felt squarely on the opposite side of the fence, but nevertheless, it was very good to have a counterpoint. Our next speaker is Anish Agarwala, who is the Additional Advocate General at Uttar Pradesh, and he's also Chairman of the All India Bar Association.
Chairman, sir, and the members of the panel and distinguished participants. Good afternoon to everyone. I am delighted to inform this august House that India is being represented at this conference by Honorable Chief Justice of India, Mr. R.C. Lahoti, our Honorable Retired Chief Justice of India and presently Chairman of National Human Rights Commission, Dr. A.S. Anand, Honorable our very esteemed former Attorney General of India, Mr. Soli Swarajji, who is a world-renowned jurist, Honorable Mr. M. Jagannath Rao, retired Judge of Supreme Court of India and presently Chairman of the Law Commission of India, and many other eminent lawyers and legal luminaries, including distinguished Chairman and Vice Chairman and members of Bar Council of India, Vice President of Supreme Court Bar Association and Vice Chairman of Bar Council of Bihar. I am particularly glad to be here in London, which is the fountainhead of all common law principles and theories, which have been adopted by many countries of the world. We lawyers who live in the Asia region firmly believe that whatever be its system of jurisprudence, the laws of every country should be administered by the established courts with the active assistance of the legal profession. We believe that an impartial administration of justice is like oxygen in the air, but like oxygen in the air, people know and care about it till it is withdrawn. All practice of law has to be done in manner which is acceptable and in accordance with general principles of professional ethics, although they vary from region to region and country. However, we should endeavor to evolve certain general principles of professional conduct which are acceptable to all countries. The legal profession in most parts of the world is at present passing through a phase of unsettling disturbance caused by the extreme pressure of public expectation about the role of the legal profession and the apathetic of its members, their incapacity to perform as expected of them. In India, where we have the largest population of lawyers, 1 million lawyers, outside the United States, many people, reasonable, intelligent people, go to the lawyers with the same education, with about the same degree of confidence as many as they go to the public hospitals. They go because they have to. To be used of the society, especially in the developing country like ours, a practicing lawyer must have and profess to have professional competence. An efficient lawyer can and often does make a great contribution to the development of law, and therefore law in turn develops when it responds to the needs of the society. But the development of the law is achieved only with enlightenment. This requires an enlarged acquaintance with human nature. A lawyer, it is said, never stops learning. If he is to serve efficiently, he must be proficient in what he practices, and the practice of law requires, in fact, demands an awareness and knowledge of a vast array of events and things. Undoubted special capacity, that is what expected of the legal profession. Only that will inspire the confidence of the litigants. We in the developing countries till recently were still in the realms of dispute handling, advising, litigating, arbitrating. We have been reluctant to take over new functions, but the second half of this 20th century has made great demands on the legal system. It calls for new functions, new approaches, fresh responses. Even for the traditional functions, lawyers are needed principally because lawmakers have not the time to think or reflect and produce complicated law rather than simple law. Complicated law is a challenge to the lawyers to be better equipped than before. The modern lawyer must answer the charge that his system and methods have not kept pace with the fast-changing world. In my humble opinion, Indian rules of professional conduct and ethics can be accepted at international level except regarding the abridgment. The Bar Council of India rules prescribes standard of professional conduct and ethics. Its preambles inter alia state, an advocate shall at all times comport himself in a manner befitting his status as an officer of the court, a privileged member of the community, and a gentleman, bearing in mind that what may be lawful and moral for a person who is not a member of the bar or for a member of the bar in his non-professional capacity may still be improper for an advocate. Without prejudice to the generality of the foregoing obligation, an advocate shall fearlessly uphold the interest of his client and in his conduct conform to the rules hereinafter mentioned, both in the letter and in spirit. The rules hereinafter mentioned contain canons of conduct and ethics adopted as general guides, yet the specific mention thereof shall not be construed as a denial of the existence of others equally imperative through not specially mentioned. Our rule regarding duty to the court. An advocate shall, during the presentation of his case and while otherwise acting before a court, conduct himself with dignity and self-respect. He shall not be servile, and whenever there is proper ground for serious complaint against a judicial officer, it shall be his right and duty to submit his grievance to the proper authorities. An advocate shall maintain towards the court a respectful attitude, bearing in mind that the dignity of the judicial office is essential for the survival of a free community. An advocate shall not influence the decision of a court by any illegal or improper means. Private communication with a judge relating to a pending case are forbidden. An advocate shall use his best efforts to restrain and prevent his client from resorting to sharp or unfair practices or from doing anything in relation to the court, opposing counsel or parties which the advocate himself ought not to do. An advocate shall refuse to represent the client who persists in such improper conduct. He shall not consider himself a mere mouthpiece of the client and shall exercise his own judgment in the use of the restrained language in correspondence, avoiding scurrilous attacks in pleadings and using interpreted language during arguments in court. An advocate shall not enter appearance, act, plead or practice in any way before a court, tribunal or authority mentioned in section 30 of the Advocates Act if the soul or any member thereof is related to the advocate as father, grandfather, son, grandson, uncle, brother, nephew, first cousin, husband, wife, mother, daughter, sister, aunt, niece, father-in-law, mother-in-law, son-in-law, brother-in-law, daughter-in-law or sister-in-law. An advocate shall not wear band or gown in public places other than in courts except on such ceremonial occasions and at such places as the Bar Council of India or the court may prescribe. An advocate shall not appear in or before